here is a really uncomfortable social issue or some particular piece of technology that we want to put in a safe space for us to talk about here. It's very relevant to us, but there's lasers and ships and it's on a moon over there. So it's not us. It's safe to talk about. It's not us, but let's talk about this thing. That's what I love about sci-fi, and that's what I hope to bring to this game as your GM. So who would like to go next? And I'll give you 10 minutes in case you need it, just for a safety sake of like safety net. No need to use all of that, but just to make sure that we are on track, because it's easy for us to bird walk, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Hi, I'm Mark. I was raised on a blend of Star Trek and Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
So, and I've always loved reading, watching anything sci-fi related. I like what I think it was Harlan Ellison who said, "Don't call it science fiction, call it speculative fiction," because what you're doing is you're just dreaming of a world or a universe or a set of universes that don't exist. It's a wide playing field. I love the sense of scale and scope, how big everything is, and sci-fi or speculative fiction does that for me. It scratches that itch.
Thank you for sharing. I like that.
Yeah.
Want to go clockwise?
Yeah, let's do it. So I'm Evie. I'm a they, them. And sci-fi is like slowly over time become the biggest thing for me. Like I ingest so many different kinds of media. But like, and like when I was younger, my parents definitely added to that. Like they were like, "Hey, we're gonna take our 8-year-old out to see aliens. That's cool, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, why not?"
Yeah, I fully agree.
Yeah, just
it happened to me.
Yeah, right.
Show me on the Xenomorph where they touch me.
Right.
Yeah.
And I grew up with that kind of stuff just being handed to me and watching it, and like so, I didn't really have a moment oh, sci-fi. It was just always kind of there until I saw Akira, and Akira literally blew my mind. I was just like, cartoons can do this? And I really attached to that media because, like you were talking about, sci-fi gives us the opportunity, like other fantasy, to explore things we wouldn't normally be able to. And so the next step was Ghost in the Shell. And that was like what was really amazing and what I really loved about Ghost in the Shell is because for me, I always run the line between like, I love the tech and that's very fascinating to me, but the human aspect is always what's going to make the tech. Like that's how we get the tech that we get is because the humans want this. And then alternatively, we get new tech because how did we use the last tech? That kind of thing.
This is going to be the right show for you.
Yeah, right?
Sounds right.
So I was super obsessed for a very long time with Ghost in the Shell in all of its iterations, both of the series, all of the movies. I don't honestly know of a Ghost in the Shell that I think is not worthy of seeing. That's just sort of my thing. And then from there, like, just kind of all kinds of stuff, video games, books. And as of late, what I think is awesome about the cyberpunk community is because initially you had Blade Runner, when you go back and watch it, little problematic, little awkward at times. Some of the older books that were very popular, they have their certain voice. But you're seeing now like a lot of really great, strong, like queer voices in gaming and in writing. And like, so that's sort of like the perspective I'm coming from is like, yeah, I want to see new stuff. I want to do new stuff. And like, just sort of the fun play with that. Because I think sci-fi can do that for us.
And that's why, to me, like this mechanic appealed. And I mean, like literally in the first 2 pages was this concept of, if you can sleeve into any body and a body literally is just now like a new appendage for you, then what the hell does gender matter?
Right.
And that's actually part of a larger conversation I want to have when we finish like introduction. But like, it's for that level. It's like, I'm really excited for the stories we're going to be able to tell with this, or just like not even tell, just have as like, this is a normalized thing. And I'm really excited for that conversation.
Yeah, for sure.
Me. I'm Conor, they, them. My earliest sci-fi memory is watching Star Wars at Christmas when I was like 4. I've always been a voracious reader. Starting out with like Jane Yolen, C.S. Lewis, all of the things. That really good British series that I forget the name of. God, I will remember. The third book is Greenwich, also Greenwich. It's a bunch of kids that are hanging out. They're trying to save the world from basically the Wild Hunt. My grandmother got me onto it. It's so good. But I think the like defining moment where it was like, oh, sci-fi, transhumanism, cyberpunk, this is my thing. And this is like where I found myself. My freshman year of high school, my English teacher was like, wow, you're so far ahead of the class and everything. Like, how about you just pick out a book? You can read it in class, do whatever you want.
That's a good.
Give me a book report at the end of it, because you know what you're doing. And the first book I picked out was Neuromancer by William Gibson.
Nice.
So yeah,
Special place in my heart too.
yeah, reading that and like being like, oh, this is because I've always like never felt like I existed properly in the world, and then like reading William Gibson and then going further and getting into like Octavia Butler, and Charles DeLint, and a lot of like urban fantasy sci-fi stuff. Realizing like, oh yeah, gender's not a thing, sexuality doesn't matter, like this world has a place for you in it, even when like the world didn't have a place for me. So yeah, and then anime and movies, and I was like all of the things. So
yes, please.
Yeah.
I like that. Something that I heard, I forget who this is attributed to, but we're our generation was hell, this may be a Fight Club reference, I can't remember. Feels like it might be. We were born too late to explore the world, born too early to explore the universe. Right. And I feel for me like that's where sci-fi clicks into as well, as like this allows us to explore these different worlds and ourselves internally, like through this shared, especially in this case, like shared storytelling. And like, what if you could live forever? Right.
Yeah.
So intriguing. Cool, thank you. Also, we should totally have a social media book club for Terra Sentia.
Oh, yeah.
Right, like, here's our recommendations, but also, like, it'd be fun to get together as a group and, like, read some books. Like, zero pressure. Like, hey, if you can, I know life is life, but I think that'd be really fun to do a thing and, like, just post about it.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. We'll put a pin in that, talk about it later. Still gotta do things. Last but certainly not least.
Hello. My name's Ashleen. I am they, them as well. I am awkward as fuck. Sorry.
Awkward as fuck.
I wrote down
Have you met
what
us?
to say when it came to me. Anyway, so I grew up consuming a lot of media with my pops. Like, I watched Star Trek Enterprise when it was like airing, like with my dad and my sisters. Like every week we would like stay up late specifically to watch it. I fucking love that show. I also really like Stargate. My dad kind of bought me all the seasons on DVD. He collects a lot of DVDs, so he did shit like that. And
When do we hang out with your dad?
My dad's great.
Does he want to play an
I wonder if
NPC?
he's one.
Right? That'd be great.
But maybe when he comes to visit next time.
Yeah.
100%.
Dad night.
So we have to figure out how to get him into the basement, but we can make it.
We can bring this to him.
We will make this
That's
work.
true. That's true. Stargate, and also love Enterprise, and I fucking also really like Sliders. I don't know if anybody's
Oh my god,
like,
yes.
I
Please.
really love the sci-fi type shows where Sliders is more like alternate
Gimli was in
reality meets like going to different worlds, but Jerry O'Connor. Anyway, but I really like the type of sci-fi where you get to see all these different like cultures and you get to experience all these different versions of what like life could have become, if that
Doctor
makes any
Who.
sense.
Yeah.
Like Doctor Who. I kind of don't like David Tennant, so I didn't watch a lot of Doctor Who, but we don't need to get into that because
I-
you'll always hate me for that shit.
I watched Doctor Who from like
Yeah. I used to watch that with my dad.
what's his butt with the long ass scarf.
Hell yeah.
Can we just call him that forever?
Yeah.
Tom
What's his
Baker.
butt?
Tom Baker.
Fourth Doctor.
Yeah.
That's My Doctor.
Yeah.
Same.
Oh, yeah.
Up, all the way up
Absolutely.
through.
My Doctor.
I haven't gotten to the newest Doctor yet, but I will someday.
Oh, the new.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I stopped
She's
with
great.
Matt Smith.
I like
Yeah.
her a lot.
Cool.
Anyway,
Oh yeah, sorry. I also really like oh, I'm sorry. I
We're gonna apologize, Shane. No.
anyway, what did Fisher say? We should take a drink every time I apologize for no reason.
oh
Yeah, but
God.
not you.
Oh, drunk.
That'll make it worse. Two
I know,
drinks.
right? I'm sorry. Oh, damn it. Okay. I also really like. I like where sci-fi kind of like blends with other genres. I really like the like combination of like sci-fi and high fantasy. Like I really like that like. Oh, we're like in this futuristic world, but like there's people walking around with like swords.
Like magic tech kind of stuff?
Yeah, like magic tech. Kind of where we're going to Terra Sentia a little bit. I really like that kind of shit. That's why I'm really stoked that we're doing that with that. I also like
Shout out to Terra Sentia. That kind of shit.
just plug their own show. No big deal.
We have to plug our own show.
Seriously. If
I
you
didn't
don't, who
sign a
else will?
thing. Not my show.
And then I also like really grew up on a lot of like horror sci-fi, and so like I don't know.
Also,
like,
this will be a show for you.
like I'm thinking like body snatchers type shit, you know,
Yeah.
and like
Wait, can
I
I,
don't know, like
ask
Predator,
you which
I love
Body
the thing.
Snatchers?
the OG
Yeah.
one, like the original
The
Body
50s?
Snatchers. Yeah. So I mean, I've seen both, but like my dad, like I said, my dad collects movies, so like I've
90s
seen
also
like
pretty good.
the old versions of scary movies, and then I've seen the newer ones. Like he made me watch The Last Man on Earth before we could watch the one with Will Smith in it.
The original Blob
I
is
am-
almost
I am
a sci-fi.
The original Blob cracked me
So
up, dude.
good.
It's just like jelly.
Love
Like,
it.
people are just
It is.
running from jelly.
Well, it's kind of like the
Guys,
fog.
jelly can go anywhere. It's then that eats you. It's fine.
Take food and just consume.
It's also tentacle-ish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
You should
Thanks.
watch the 90s Body Snatchers because it's so good.
also, yeah, I was
I've
just
seen that
saying,
one,
like,
too.
Yeah.
I still have tripped out moments of like the tub scene where I was like, first off, don't fall asleep in the tub. That's just poor.
The thing
Poor
still
choice
gives me
of judgment.
nightmares.
Yeah. I mean, you
It
also have
should.
great
The
movies
thing
like
is-
Moon or Pandemonium.
I've seen him, but I haven't
Yeah.
seen Moon.
Moon is phenomenal. It's similar
will
to
do
like
Yeah. You can still chime in off screen. Hello,
Yeah.
sir.
Oh, I was just gonna say, Moon is so near and dear to my heart in terms that it is psychological sci-fi thriller.
yeah, it's
First of all, Sam
wonderful.
Rockwell also
Absolutely.
Yeah.
phenomenal actor, but yeah, just that level of like, what is going on? I love that existential sci-fi horror. Like,
And I think it
so
really
good.
taps into that like
We're gonna watch it.
what would it actually be like to be alone in space, just working, just to work, just to be a grunt. Like,
As a GM, it's like plot notes. Alone
Right.
in space. Check.
Yeah.
Yeah. And shout out to Event Horizon as well.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
So
My
Horror
last thing I will
sci-fi.
say is
Yeah.
I tend to avoid time travel related sci-fi just because it fucks with my brain. But I'm not against it 100%.
It's so hard. It's so hard to do good.
So I'm not promising deep future. There's not going to be something weird with that, but generally,
That's
I'm
fine.
going to say like because we are still going to go through. I'll talk about expectations for what we're doing, and like we're still going to follow like some of the guidelines of microscope, like yeses and nos, for instance. But for me, like I'm not going to do a lot with time travel just for the nature
I
of
wouldn't
like
make
we're
that a
doing so
no
much
anyway.
anyway.
That's uninteresting.
I'm just saying it's one, unless somebody gives me a real solid like conversation about how we get over entropy for time travel, I'm not willing to entertain it in this case. Not to say I will not run time travel stuff in the future. They're not cannot be something cool, but that's not where we're going at the very least, right? We got other stuff to deal with.
And if we wind up near a supermassive black hole, there may be some
Time dilation, that's fun.
That's yeah.
I'm not
and
saying
totally
time isn't going to
different.
be a factor, but there's no backwards in time. There's a couple settings, but there's no backwards yet.
Right.
Currently. At any rate, thank you all so much for sharing. And that alone gave me a lot of cool ideas. And
Yeah.
I really like one. I got some cool magic tech books to talk to you about later, but we'll put it on the book club. Hey, friends. I'm already doing a thing we just came
Oh,
up
and the
with right
series you guys recommended to me, but I can't remember what it's called right now. The Obelisk Gates.
Oh,
now. That basically Broken Earth series.
Yeah.
Yes. Amazing.
Yeah.
That was like a really
What
good
is-
like
what is
high
their name?
fantasy
The
meets
author's
sci-fi
name?
for me.
N.K. Jemisin.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Very
So-
high fantasy.
Right now I'm juggling a lot of balls, and so like details are somewhat skipping me from there. I will always be juggling as many balls as possible. Thank you.
Fondle those.
So speaking about
It's not
this,
juggling.
so speaking about this,
It's contact juggling.
Yeah.
nice. back to Camp 10. So with that introduction, right, I asked about our pronouns. And I mean, there's 3 of the 5 of us on camera at the table who are going by like they, them. That is like your truth. And since we exist in a world specifically says in the first couple pages, right, like we talked about, that gender is just not a thing when bodies are no longer you, right? Something that my father said to me when I was younger that really stuck with me, just on a lot of philosophical levels, but also sci-fi, is that you refer to yourself when, like, you know, you were hurt, be like, oh, my body is blah, right? That's a possessive, like, noun, right? So you're talking about, like, oh, like, who has ownership over your body, right? And that's always had me thinking about the soul, consciousness, etc. And this realm, this world that we're building, this technology that Eclipse Phase really embraces, is that, right? And that your body is a thing that you own for a while or you inhabit, but it's not you. And so that concept of, gender just being mute, right? So I want to talk about how we want to treat that both at the table as players, but also in game, because in game they recommend every single pronoun you use is they, right, for everybody, and I want to hold to that absolutely, with some hopefully like giving me some leeway because I'm going to be breaking some interesting habits from society, but like something that I want to move closer to in the real world anyway. So with that in mind, I also want to talk about like how do we want to handle like character descriptions, right? Because that's going to be interesting for me, because I'm going to want to try and rely on, especially as a first-time GM, like, like this person looks like this, like with, maybe gender-based kind of like notions, right? And I want to veer away from that as much as possible. And I would love your suggestions on how to like talk about interesting characters, both for your own character introductions, but NPCs that I'm running into, AIs, who knows what, like ways to talk about their physicality that, still nods to there are biological histories and pieces things, but are not like who they are, right? So what are relevant physical details? And maybe you don't answer this right now, but I would love to maybe start the conversation. What do you think?
I have some ideas, like just in the sense that it kind of, for me, because I've often played characters that I don't identify with, right? So like there becomes this moment where you're like trying to talk about your character, but you're not that character and like that kind of thing. And so for me, it's always just, and then also playing characters, like I've played a lot of characters where, and it was sort of like part of my own journey too, but like where basically I didn't want them to be able to be perceived, and that was part of their character development. So the way that the other characters or GM would describe them would be depending on who saw them. So like like for example, if my character walked into a certain kind of village, knowing what the physicality of my character was and how they were dressed, they would utilize that local lore and that local people to give the description of how they're reacting. So like not necessarily like being gendered or one way or the other, but sometimes it was like, they see a beautiful such and such or whatever it happens to be. And that's just an idea of like sort of like switching it up depending to kind of like add to the role play of the person that you're trying to embellish.
I like that, especially because, I think there's still going to be, like, we're dealing with this transhuman, we're beyond a lot of these things, but there's still going to be these, like, trope, these connections, this, like, culture that's been built upon generations of other, right? And moments where there could be people trying to manipulate a room, being like, I'm showing up, like, bam, just stacked in the chest and looking like such and such, and they might want to be like, I am doing this stereotypical 1900s like boom bombshell, right? For a reason, and they may be somebody else inside, right? So I think there's moments to certainly like embrace those physicalities, and I will do that as a descriptive measure, when needed. But I also really like what Patrick Rothfuss says about how he treats a lot of his characters, like unless there's specific like need for like this is my main character or something like that, doing implicit versus explicit description. But I want to find that balance with this media that we're working on in terms of telling the story, and for all of you, right, it's like talk about the physicality when needed, but more like how different people are interacting with them or reacting to them to kind of help create that image in your mind. I want to create a fully fleshed out world as much as possible, but like with this interesting concept in mind.
I think it's a fun way to play with the conversation that we're trying to have and having outside the room as well as like playing with inside the room, right? Is because you know, whatever one might think is like, I would love to have a genderless world, but we don't live in that, right? Or whatever. So you're going to run into all of it.
Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I was thinking about that it might be like interesting to explore like that the society as a whole at this point, or maybe even just part of it, is fully transhuman and to like maybe like completely asexual, agendered, and like so they would have like a whole different set of behaviors and then I was imagining, well, when you're talking about character descriptions, you're giving a, unless you're just giving a completely like uncolored just basic description, like imagine how an alien would describe someone rather than how a human with or humanesque or transhuman, like without the natural context that we take for granted.
Right.
And
so, like, instead of talking about like color your skin, like this person has a higher than average like melatonin content or something like that, or chooses to do this, or stripes, or
right,
world,
or
like,
they appear to be a sack of blood and with carbon structures inside that are keeping it aloft.
I heard this really good description of human. Because it was talking about you think you're your body, and it's like, no, you're an idea riding around in a ball of jelly in a bone Gundam with flesh armor.
Nice.
Yeah.
Gross.
Right.
Yeah.
A ghost.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, a ghost riding a skeleton, a stardust skeleton, like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You're really like 5 pounds of like neural tissue that uses electricity to drive around a skeleton.
Yeah. Well, like also, I mean, if you look at early Gundam designs, like they are very skeletal.
They are.
Skeletons are some of the best things that nature has created for turning like chemical engineering into chemical engineering.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Anyway, without getting too sidetracked, that's my goal for tonight, is to keep us as focused as possible. Ashley, do you have anything you want to add to that? No need to add, but just thought I'd look around, make sure everybody has a chance.
No, I'm good. Cool. Sorry.
Conor? Anything to add to that?
I kind of agree with what everybody said.
Beyond bone Gundam and flesh armor, not really.
Okay, cool. All right, sounds good. And then I just asked from your perspective, like just some like I want to have conversations at the table and outside the table. Like if there's anything like weird or sticky or interesting that comes up, I would love to just have that conversation, because this is going to be like, I don't know, a really cool ideal for us, I think, to play around with and then see where it goes. So bear with me. Cool. So with that in mind, we vaguely talked about using like microscope as sort of the system for like brainstorming. I honestly should have, well before this, said, okay, microscope in giant quotation marks, because I really don't like. I'm using some elements for it, but we are not at all following that pattern. And this is far more of a, I'm going to sort of like guide you through a conversation. I'm going to have you sort of role play a little bit tonight. Not necessarily as a particular person, but as like a mindset in certain ways. And I'll describe that. But one of the things before we even get into that, and I give you more expectations for what's going to happen, I do want to pull this piece out of microscope, as in like the yes/no's content. In terms of, I want to steer away specifically from, I want to have like dwarves and griffins in this moment, right? Like I want to use that as like a yes/no, but like specifically things that you are not comfortable with, like coming up potentially as a theme or an idea or a concept, or yeses that are like, that you're interested in like definitely pursuing as one particular piece. I would love people to like, you want to write it down? You're saying, cool. That'll make it easier for me, so I don't have to like multitask both.
Yay!
So, like for instance, like, hey, just me as like a no as a GM, I'm going to avoid time travel for now, right? I'm putting that as a soft no for me, as in I reserve the right to maybe trick you and do something wonky, but in terms of the mechanics in this world, that's the piece that I'm saying no on. So time travel bill for now. Backwards time travel, just to be clear again. But as a yes for me, like this universe is going to operate under the same physical constants that our universe does, right? So I'm gonna, keep that as like one of our set and fast rules. We can go way more in depth than this, right? But I just want to say, like, I'll start us off. So what I want to do with this is take potentially 10 minutes. So I'm going to flip this time over now. So there's no, like, you need to come up with 1 or you need to come up with 10. During this time, I want to have conversations. Everybody hopefully come up with 1 thing. But if we need to keep going around, cool. But passing is also okay. So does anybody else have something they yes or no's that Bill will write down?
No werewolves.
Copy.
No zombies.
Copy.
Well, but
The monster mash.
If I have to have a conversation about how zombies can still move around when they're rotting,
No,
I will
no,
go
so-
out of my mind.
the hesitation was more for the werewolves, only because I'm convinced that we can have any kind of bodies.
You
Like-
can. Sure, I'm not saying you can't have something that looks like a wolf.
Oh, okay.
You just don't want the typical werewolf where you scratch somebody.
Yeah,
No.
and I'm only half serious here.
Oh, okay.
But those are just things that I
werewolves.
find trite at this point. But
Yeah.
but sure, if you make a character that looks like a wolf, that's actually kind of awesome.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I was just thinking about it because, like, old cyberpunk books, there were actually add-ons for that RPG that were all like animal skins, like things that, like like mech bodies you could get and stuff like that. So I couldn't help it. I was like, wait a minute,
No.
werewolves belong.
No, let me clarify things. Then I do want my yes is full transhumanism. Like if you can clone or bioengineer or make synthetic a body that can look like anything, and the brain goes in it and it lights up and walks around, go crazy.
Cool.
Like I think
the piece I'm going to add to that is an asterisk. You don't have to actually write it down. But the asterisk is, yes, that will happen. It may not happen immediately. And you'll see what I mean by that when I get into some other limitations down the line. But yes, that's happening.
Sure.
But there's going to be like a progression for us.
I'm not making any demands.
Cool. This is that moment, but cool. I like it. We'll move counterclockwise. And we can pass and come back to you later too, so no pressure. Loki.
So this is, I guess, something we could talk about. I kind of would like whoever we are coming from, whatever ship we're on, to be kind of past the point of religion, but I don't want to completely say no religion because I don't know if we're visiting worlds. Like, that's an interesting piece that come into play, like on underdeveloped places.
You can be
But
specific in this case. So in terms of like where humanity comes from,
like wherever we come from, like I think we
is there a difference between
evolved past,
spirituality
like-
and religion in this case?
Yeah,
Cool.
definitely. But like, there's no like, I don't want us
No
to be like
deity.
worshiping some fucking deity that doesn't actually exist. I don't know. I'm sorry. I
apologize.
don't know if we have any religious viewers. I'm agnostic. We don't
actually
need to get into it. I
feeds-
apologize though.
No, I don't think anything you apologize for. Also, by
cool.
the way, I drink. You know the
Damn
drink.
it. Well, I'm drinking my caffeine, so
We need to get
Yeah,
you water.
caffeine.
The caffeine when you apologize.
yeah. Alcohol.
If we combine that drinking game into Terra Sentia, I'm done for.
Yeah. We might have to make special GM rules.
Right,
To see how
yeah.
this goes. No, thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. And actually, like that feeds in well to one of the first sort of like world building elements I want to go into, which was like, what society are we into now, right? Kind of like the Star Trek level of like they've obviously like been through some stuff. Society has changed. We are radically changed to get to the point where we're going to be at in the storyline. What does that look like? So I'm going to say that yes is 100%. Like that can be where we come into, unless there's a discussion we want to get into later. That like what would that look like? But I am fine with people being like, we are in a post like deity kind of universe, right?
Yeah, I just don't want like religiously like drawn like driven motives from like anybody like on our ship or I don't know. I don't.
You
believe
mean
in that
like-
bullshit.
like-
You
sort
don't
of
want
like
flying
Warhammer?
churches. That's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah. So like in Warhammer, where they have like these incredibly driven like groups of people that are on crusades and that kind of thing. Is that what you're talking about? Like you don't want that.
kind of yeah.
Yeah.
So I do not promise that some level of fanaticism may come up from time to time.
Oh, that's fine.
But it's definitely not going to be a like.
Mhm.
Let me put this golden calf.
I
up
kind
myself
of
thing.
feel like fanatics are religion is their excuse, but they're a little bit outside it.
Well, if you're
Exactly.
really
So
zealous
it's like
are the religious fanatics.
Yeah, so-
You know what I mean?
There's going to be like there may be some elements of like I want to have some room to play with some interesting ideas, but there's not going to be like churches.
Okay.
Right.
Cool with that.
And so I want to jump in from off camera. Hi, everybody. Bill. I won't be speaking all that much. That
He's
so
our
I
ghost
just
in the
finished
machine.
Altered Carbon today. And one of the things that I really got from that show is that a lot of people, because they've been alive for so long, they are sort of akin to gods in that immortality, that ancient immortality sort of effect, even though they're completely mortal.
Yeah. And if we're all gods, is anyone a god?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. That was perfect. So that's all I wanted to contribute.
I
Might
mean,
be our tagline for one of our episodes.
Stargate, they're gods just because they have tech that's better.
You're
Yeah,
just a
but
snake
any-
in somebody's
That's
head.
essentially
Any
the concept of Stargate. Yeah.
Any
As guardians.
sufficiently advanced technology will be perceived as witchcraft by a lesser.
Or is like
right?
or is like a
Or was
demon.
that Asimov? Asimov or Arthur C. Clarke? You said that.
I can't remember,
Yeah.
but
Some nerd. Look
I've
it up for us
definitely
later.
like paraphrased that one 100 million times.
It's one of my
Yeah.
favorites, right? Like I absolutely agree. And like magic tech, right? And we talk about that in Terra Sentia,
Right.
and that like, is this magic? Is it tech? Doesn't matter, right? It's a mechanism. It's like you just bumping. Cool. Thanks. I dig that.
Yeah.
Uh,
I don't have a yes right now. Maybe when we come back around.
no, that sounds good.
And
We're gonna come around multiple
and
times.
I'm not going to promise that I won't try to start a cult at a certain point.
Yeah, that's
so
fine.
Cults,
Nice.
I will join your
cults are fun.
Religion.
or is it?
I want to say no replicators and no laser guns.
Replicators, as in the Stargate like creature thing.
Why
Replicator
laser
or
guns,
no?
though?
No, the Star Trek, like creating that sort of matter creation from
Nothing.
Wait, we're talking Battlestar?
Nothing.
Did you just ask that?
Star Trek.
Star Trek. Okay.
Cool.
Okay, but
Like, I
nanobots are
want-
okay.
Nanobots are different because they're a
That's
physical thing.
Yeah.
Like
Cool. So
transporter technology, I always like get a little iffy about. I'm like,
no transporter, no replicator. Yeah.
yeah.
So cool. I'm
I
definitely
think,
cool with that.
I think we already.
On the replicator side, I want to say yes from the like hand wavy science side of it, but like there is, I think, good solid science foundation in terms of talking about something that could be like that. But I want to get into it in terms of like hey, what would this look like in actual brainstorming kind of idea, like a 3D printer kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's
And
what I was thinking.
I'm
Yeah.
totally okay with 3D printers.
Cool.
Like
But I have
those,
my nano program that makes me the perfect hamburger every time.
and that's a thing.
So
but
I'm going to write no
Can we have
soft
the
science
WandaVision thing where you can
replicators.
see
There we
stuff
go.
on
Actually, just
television?
generally no soft science. What's that?
Soft science.
Well,
Can we do the
but
Wonka
I think we've
thing
already.
where you can send stuff across TV?
no, that's replicators.
Is that replicators?
Yeah.
Okay, but what
that comes
about
back
energy
around-
weapons?
Yeah, why energy weapons? That's
Well, no, they said
I-
laser guns, and I just want to clarify.
Because it's
That's a devastating.
really hard to have a laser that's that powerful and that small of a housing. I'm not opposed to energy weapons like microwave guns, which are extremely possible.
Just want to cook part of your body.
Yeah.
Fuck that shit.
Oh, yeah.
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 Particular
That's
part.
so fucked up.
Do you need that eyeball? You don't.
No.
Yes,
Like,
the-
how about
the,
that artery? Is that bothering you?
Oh, I just spoiled it.
So the army was actually experimenting with a focused microwave transmitter that they were designing for crowd control, and they like trained it on some volunteer, or maybe they were just like soldier, go out there and stand in the middle of this field, and then and everyone put their head down and ran away, like
Because
they call it the goodbye effect.
super fucking uncomfortable.
Time
So
out.
one of our watchers,
Hi, watchers.
Epronje, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, says plasma is popular in eclipse phase.
Cool.
True.
So here's the thing. I'm open to this, and again, this will also be part of our limitations and how tech progresses.
Right.
I'm gonna start us out without this stuff, and we'll talk about it. But I see plasma, yes, because it can be magnetically channeled. We have power with that. It doesn't have to be super high intensity, just concentrated, right? So we can actually. I mean, I've seen plasma guns. They're not like high tech or wow, why can't I think of that? The video game. No, it'll come to me later. Anyway, like plasma weapons, I like we currently don't have it, but it's very plausible. I think that's cool. Like channel stuff. But yeah, I agree. Lasers, like you've got to have like a significant power source, and not to say that we can't come up with something, but this is where
I mean, like you
I'm
could
gonna
have
bring
a
it back to guess, like-
ship-size laser,
yeah.
but like you can't have a handheld laser blaster. Like
Not without giving me some good like reasons to how we get there.
Yeah.
Which I'm open to doing in this game because there's a certain level of like where our tech can go. You're not there yet.
yeah,
But you also need to give me some like not hand wavy, soft sciencey stuff again.
yeah. Yeah, I'm totally fine with creating a plasma gun though. Like,
Well, get back to me. We'll
yeah,
try.
plasma cannon.
Yeah. We should talk about how feasible that would be on a ship though. I'd also
Please
what
don't cut a
limitations.
hole in the ship.
Yeah.
Cool.
Um.
I'd be like that. I 3D printed those for funsies.
Yeah, probably shouldn't have projectile weapons on the ship in general.
Yeah, we'll talk about
That's
that's
why
that's part of my jam.
electricity
Nice.
weapons are probably better.
Tase me, bro. So
I'm
that's,
going to, yeah, I'm with Ashley. Straight up
Sabers, lightsabers.
stabby.
But like not
Oh, yeah.
lightsabers, but like a saber. Never mind.
It's a very low weight weapon.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of no's and not a lot of yeses.
Cool. I'm cool with
We
this.
don't want anything.
We want everything.
Well, honestly, like no and yeses was to me is a very,
All we ever
you could
wanted was
rephrase it as a
everything.
positive or a negative. It's really a good list of like this is a thing, definitely don't want or yes, and frankly having more no's is going to give me a really clear box to play in.
Yeah.
However you want to do it. Yeah. So if you have any more, we can come back to you. Let's do. That'd be next.
I don't honestly have a lot of resounding no's for the most part. In general, other than like sort of just problematic stuff that is probably not going to happen, other than like, well, so like the genre itself sometimes is wrought with like just sort of like a classic example, Blade Runner, right? It's got that noir like cyberpunk thing going for it.
Mm-hmm.
Super beautiful movie. The relationship between Harrison Ford and I forget her name.
Sean Young.
Is awful. And
She's not a real person. It's fine.
yeah, right, exactly.
She's not a real
and the thing
person.
is like
Spoiler.
If that's spoiling Blade Runner for you, I am sorry. You should have watched it a long time ago.
Decades ago.
Yeah, how
Yeah,
many?
Fuck out.
so
Sorry, continue.
oh well for me it's just that like I'm obviously like I want to be open to role play and I want to see people like push their boundaries and explore whatever we want to explore. I think that I just would like to not see us go towards, and I think we're good. I think we're good, which is why it's sort of like a side note in my mind
Still
is,
important to talk about.
yeah, it's just that I don't want to see us like kind of like roll over into some of those trappings of the genre. I want to see like, or if it comes up because like it is going to be a diverse world with lots of different types of people that we encounter. I would love to see like fun and creative ways for dealing with those situations as opposed to what is normally done in the genre.
Like go to a very, I think, safe version of that, but to reference back to Star Trek, right, where they have this new society where the driving goal isn't greed anymore, capitalism. It is like personal achievement and the betterment of everything. But they still run into people who have been trapped in a void for generations or like cryogenically frozen, right? And they're like, oh, so how do I get that money here? And they're like, we don't do that anymore, right? So like those kind of moments, right, where there's somebody who's still in this former trappings and maybe a former trappings of gender or as other piece comes in and they're just like, honey, this is the new world now, right? Like, and that I would love to explore those, but I agree. I don't want to get us down like this is what we're doing.
Right.
And I'm not worried about that with our group.
Yeah. And I'm mostly not either. So,
but I also want to know, like, it's a safe space, either like on camera if you're like, hey, safe word, like we need like a sci-fi safe word, be like, this is getting deep, or afterwards if we want to like, let's talk about one. You guys want to pick a sci-fi safe word?
Black hole.
No, that's going to come up. That's not a good safe
also,
word.
it's 2 syllables. It needs
My safe word is don't stop. It's not
Antwerp.
Antwerp.
What is
What?
I don't think Antwerp would come up.
It's a city in Belgium.
So now it's my goal to work it into the storyline somehow. The SS
the first
Antwerp.
planet we visited
Nice.
was Antwerp.
I'm cool with that. You guys down with Antwerp? Is that easy to remember enough for you?
Yeah.
Hey, I'm feeling
I'll
uncomfortable. Can we
remember it.
pause for a minute?
Yeah.
Cool.
Hey
But
guys,
you can also
I'm
just yell
going
out
to
safe word.
Antwerp.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh God. And we'll be right back. Short commercial break. Cool. Awesome. Thanks. Yeah, I think that's good.
Good word choice.
Yeah, solid.
I got it from a sci-fi book.
So this is more on the yes side of things.
Like, where did that come from?
For me, is kind of like playing off that soft science kind of question. Is that I'm going to be able to roll with most of the things that you guys throw at me. I'm hoping. But like my goal is for technology that we do, for reasons why things happen, I want to have based in pretty solid science, right? And it can be hand wavy in terms of it's speculative, right? It is like this is in the future. I want to see like a logical reason why a thing's happening, not just sparkly lights and a burger comes out, right? Like that level of like it's science. Shut up! Like no.
Okay, but I want that.
Yeah. And,
You can have sparkly lights and you can have a burger.
yeah.
But
Nanotech it. Right? Talk about it.
Yeah.
Right? I'm just, for me, what I mean by that is I want to have, and we're going to start doing that today. I want to have a mechanism, right? I want to see like, hey, this thing is happening because of this, right? Or like, and it doesn't have to be, hey, I've read this paper or here's the equation behind it, right? But like, this at least is plausible based upon this concept of quantum mechanics, right? Like, give me a little piece. Like, I kind of want to use this as a great learning tool for everyone too. Like, this is a reason why this idea should work, or this thing, and I'm going to build my world based upon that because I want it to be logically consistent and make sense for us. Because hopefully that's gonna lead to way cooler stories because nature does some crazy stuff, man. Yeah. That's when we can be random around the circle.
yeah,
With that.
no magic gravity.
Oh no worries. I have plans already
We're
for you.
Yeah.
spinning.
No, I know, but
That was a shot at me, wasn't it?
Magic gravity.
yes,
Yes. Okay, cool.
totally.
Cool.
Hey,
Shots fired.
the mycelium pulled us down to the ground.
That was
Yeah.
different. That wasn't magic gravity.
Okay, so
Obviously
not a
dark
shot
matter.
at me. Okay,
No.
great.
Did you really think I was taking pot shots?
I'm just really used to
'Cause
failing in
I
the
got
like,
you.
last 3 days, and I'm really like,
No.
I'm good.
No, you're a winner.
But
You didn't fail. The sky specter needed to blow up.
so what I
Yeah,
wrote down is hard science.
Yes.
Should I write down 99%? Like just to give you a little leeway on like the unexplained and what things you can.
Put it this way, I'm not a big fan of like, hey guys, this is plot device science, right? We're not gonna like best I can. There may be moments where I'm like, you don't know what a thing's happening here, but like I also want you to trust me that I'm gonna have solid reasons and good foundations behind the stuff that I have happened to you.
And it's highly likely that at some point we're going to be exposed to something like an artificial reality that we may not realize that
Oh
we're
yeah,
in,
totally.
and then things that that's like
I want to
that
meet the queue.
I'm just saying, like, there are ways for all of this stuff to still be logically consistent and also have some weird things happen.
But when you say explanations, are you talking like Stargate level of explanations where they always like bullshit science explain everything, even if it's not like real, but it's not just like it comes from nowhere. They're always like, oh, we have to do this to make this phalange work.
Guys, we've got
you know what I mean?
you've got an increased level of gravitons in the area, and all power through the forward deflector and make this work, right? Like, no,
We need
so
the flux capacitor.
Yeah,
that
like
is 100%. So first off, I mean,
because I'm not
change the
very
frequency.
sciencey.
you could tell me flux capacitor if there is a mechanism for how the flux capacitor does a thing, right? Like, I'm just saying, like, we're not like, if let's say we talk about gravitons, right?
Yes.
It's going to be based upon, hey, there is a theorized particle. Like I could talk about gluons, right? I could talk about gravitational waves, things that maybe we don't fully understand very well yet, and you can say that, hey, this is how it works, and we're going to make that somewhat canon in us if it seems plausible.
Yeah.
That is what I mean in terms of like, hey, let's keep it based upon something that is scientific. So there's going to be a level where 99% we have some fudge because we are speculating on things that is not current science.
So I want you to read
Can you just read it to me?
this. Well, no, I want you to read it because there's some shorthand. So Epper said this. Yes,
Cool.
They requested that I use their name shorthanded.
So no EP wormholes, no EP psi, no qubit-based FTL comms. Cool.
no what? FTL comms, yeah.
Faster than light
it's-
communications.
Yeah.
What'd you say?
So don't. Yeah. So
Faster than light
that was a thing that I really
communications.
loved. I'm gonna give you a fun back in a second, but I'm gonna double check on these things.
Totally.
Remind me no EP if you're up there. Tell me what
Eclipse
EP means.
phase.
Oh, gotcha. Wormhole. So I want to answer these in sort of like wormholes wise. I'm open to interesting astronomical phenomenon that are theorized and perhaps that we have not observed yet. Right. So I'm open to some things along those lines. But they're going to operate within concepts that I think are still physical and make sense. In terms of sci, yeah, I want to have a sci conversation with y'all because that seems weird, but I think there's ways we can work it in if we want something like psionics, right? Like, or psychic or etc.
Got it.
Questionable. But yeah, so no, in terms of faster than light comms, I agree. So I really liked the Another Life that just came out. I enjoyed that a lot. But they also did a lot of hand wavy science, which is fine for them because I appreciate that if they're going to do hand wavy science, they just don't explain it. Like, not just like here's the gravitons to do the thing. Crap explanation.
No, it's just what happens.
It's just we do this, and like you can make believe, kind of that implicit hard science, right? Is like, no, we just found a way to do this. Don't ask questions. We're not talking about it. Not the point of the show, and that I was okay with. But for us, it's I would want more of an explanation for me if there was a faster than light communications. Currently, I do not see a way for that in our game. Hopefully, that answers your question.
Was Another Life the one with Katie Sackhoff?
Yeah, I really dig it.
I want to watch it.
So good.
It's good. It's really
So
good.
good.
I just like Katie Sackhoff.
It's in that level of like it feels like a good quality campy sci-fi with a bit of a twist. Like, it's campy, but it's not too campy. Like, it's not making fun of itself. It's very self-aware. It uses some tropes but twists them in a really fun way. And so I like it. It's like, this feels comfortable and new.
Sweet.
Yeah. We'll talk more about it later. I'm going to get your perspective on it. Awesome. So, are there any more yeses or nos on the table? We can go back to this later, but I want to see if there's anything pressing that has come up.
I think we should move on and actually go back to it later if things come up.
That's what I feel.
Yeah.
I just wanted to give an option in case there was like, I've been holding on to this kind of moment. So let's talk about expectations for this. So like I said, this is different than Microscope, in that we are not doing I do not want to do a specific timeline. In fact, we're going to leave that very vague. I want you all to be very surprised by a lot of the episodic pieces that might come up or the twists and turns. What I'm really looking for is you are all very passionate and interested in so many different stories and ideas and media, from sci-fi to things that are not sci-fi, like whatever you want. I want to talk about some very practical things in our world and build that together. I want to talk about some ideas and things that you want to bring in that we are going to discuss, and I can choose to use and adapt and change and bring into this world and with my own stuff. But I'm going to heavily guide kind of where our story is. So for instance, the one of the base things, and this would be good to maybe write down or keep track of, but as we've talked about before, and maybe this is the first time for the viewers, we are going to be on a colony ship. I don't know the name. We will come up with that. I'll leave that to go for the group. But we are on not only the colony ship, but the first colony ship that humanity has sent out, right? We do not have colonies in any large form, even around our solar system yet. Maybe some small bases here or there. I don't know. But either way, we are on the first colony ship heading to the Trappist solar system. We will talk more about that solar system in the future. Hence the name, Trappist Transfer. You can look it up. It's a cool spot around a red dwarf that, I'm going to remember this, make sure I'm not misquoting it, but about 40 light years away. Identified because there are many different planets that are Earth-sized, several of which are within the habitable zone, and it seems like an ideal, relatively close location for the first transhuman colony to spread humanity out there. That is sort of going to be the general setting, and we're going to get to real specifics on it. So the bookends I want to give you is we leave Earth, and we're going to pick up the storyline shortly after that. And the other bookend is we will arrive at our destination. That is going to happen. I promise no way how we're going to do that, or how many people, or what that looks like, what the journey in between, whether it's even the destination we intended, but it will arrive somewhere eventually. That is sort of the general bookends I have for us on this colony ship. And so some of the things that I want to do in terms of these expectations, let me talk about this. So got that there. Yeah, that's good. In this, I'm going to bring up sort of questions to you about, and we can follow these down various rabbit holes, but in terms of what the background leading up to where we are, particular timelines, the year it might be, things like that. And for larger sort of topics, I'm going to give us sort of 10 minutes per topic, with an option to extend 5 minutes that we can use occasionally if there is like, hey, we're in the midst of like trying to solve something out, and kind of go from there. Generally, I'm going to reserve the right to kind of like tweak and alter some things. Like nothing of this is really canon unless like 3 or more of you are like, this is the thing I really want, and that for some reason, odd chance I'm against it for whatever reason, I doubt it, then I'll be like, cool, I'm taking what you guys say on that. Sound good?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Awesome. So one of the first things I want to set the sort of concept of for our universe, like I said, the constants for the universe are going to be the same, right? So generally presume this is our universe. It's not our future necessarily. We just want to say that physics will operate the way we at least expect it to, with caveats and twists as things happen. I would like this, unless there's arguments, to be relatively near future for us, right? Like within not 20 years, right? But we're talking maybe 1 to 200 years. Soon-ish, certainly future enough for this tech to have developed. And I'm open to people tossing out a time on that. I think perhaps towards the extended end of that 200 years. But why that is I want our technology to be somewhat similar to we are now, but obviously with the beginnings of this transhuman tech, right? We have cortical stacks. We have the ability to transfer consciousness. It's still new, right? It's not like everything goes smoothly all the time. We certainly haven't spread out into the universe, right, in the galaxy. So this is our first colony, like we're still new. Nanotech is around, but we're still figuring out what we can do with all of it, right? And like some of the implications. But certainly we are in the beginning of this epoch of what this means for humanity, right? And that's kind of where I want us to at least begin, is right around that concept. So with that in mind, think about like humanity is now at this stage when we're just first sending out this colony ship. And so before we get to that, I want to talk about the history that's led up to. This is going to be my first question for you all. Is currently, right, 2019, we're kind of in a shithole. Environmentally speaking, politically, there's a lot going on in the world. We are far from united as humanity, right? We have problems that very likely may filter us out of the universal gene pool. And I hope that we get past that. Don't worry, this is not going to be super nihilist. I want to look towards a bit of hope, right, in this. But obviously, like, this world that we are jumping into got past that hump somehow. And my first question to you, and I don't have any particular plans for this, but my first question to you is, how did humanity get by climate change? How did we progress past the point where we are at each other's throats, where we are far from looking outwards, but we're looking inwards?
So you're asking us to solve the world's problem.
It doesn't have to be specific. Yeah, actually, a little bit.
Yeah.
It can be hand-wavy. Maybe we got into wars, Star Trek-wise. I don't know. I want to talk about this and create some history leading into where we start. Go for it.
So, I mean,
this one's a big one.
First thing is carbon zero energy that is free. Like, that's, everyone's like, oh, I need energy. I need to hoard all the resources. But if energy is, imagine we had a giant fusion reactor in the sky that was free.
Shucks.
Real quick question. Are we doing in the realm of microscope? Are we doing periods, events, scenes?
Throw that out. We're kind of done with microscope at this point. Like I said, real microscopy question mark. You're going to write stuff down.
I got you.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of guiding. Sorry, that's why I kind of said I'm derailing it. I had a really good idea, I think, and hope it works well with me. Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, so sun, fusion reactor in the sky.
So yeah, like
carbon zero.
Either really good solar tech, which is very feasible very soon, or like harnessing the energy from waves, like
You're saying like renewable energy.
Renewable energy and like
heal the
but
earth,
like
kinda?
really zero carbon.
water.
Yeah. Like,
so with that, and I kind of want to, I'm going to, like I said, guide this. I'm going to bounce it around.
Yeah.
So bouncing off that to somebody else. So we absolutely need that, but there's a lot of evidence to say that we're currently at a point where we not only need the carbon zero, but carbon negative, right? Like we need to draw some things out of the environment to control that better. Let's presume that we're starting to get access to far more power, which is key. What do y'all think in terms of something that could be beneficial to like draw carbon out of the atmosphere, or how we could technology-wise?
I just wanted to throw this out, and feel free to bomb it. Very idiosyncratic alien appearance, like gives us some, like basically gives us the tools with which we need to fix things, but gives us nothing else. Like sure, they may like in a secondary way influence our technological development, but only because they gave us basically like kind of like a guardian angel race, and all they do is just make sure that the ecosystem doesn't completely collapse.
Mm-hmm.
And like, okay, you guys had a chance to fix it, and here you go, bye, and then completely gone.
Can it be for some ridiculous reason, like in Lilo and Stitch, how there's that one alien who's trying to save the mosquito population? And,
Right.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like,
Their
there's this thing
motives,
on Earth. And
their motives could be...
Octopi are the most advanced species in the universe.
there you
but
go.
because limitations of what you're doing,
the
we want to save them.
octopi
Please
come
don't
back.
Yeah, something
Yes,
like
yes, the space octopi come back to save the octopi on the Earth. Which was
This is like Star Trek 4 with whales.
It's like a kind of like a botched.
Kind of into it.
It was a botched colony attempt. Like they got separated, and this was like the rescue mission. But
It's a little more like goodbye and thanks for all the fish. Like the dolphins are leaving because they're like, oh, y'all fucked this up.
I see I see an interesting piece of that. I like that. I don't want alien life definitely exists in the universe. I don't want there to be a like a super omnipresent alien intelligence yet, right, or anything along those lines.
That's why I said they rolled in, attended to this one issue. This is your second chance, and then they're gone, and then we never ever see them again.
Cool. I like that.
It's a little what is it, Deus Ex Machina? But
yeah, it works great for me.
But why not? But like.
So I see like they only approach because a sort of like a prime directive kind of level of like, okay, you reached a certain thing or certain level that has allowed us to even do that, right? A message or something along those lines.
And maybe they're offended by by us destroying the planet.
Yeah. So as a piece, and I'm
offended by that.
Yeah, right. Me too. Currently, if you all feel comfortable with this is something I would love to do. I would like a la Star Trek. I would love for there to be in our near future. Storyline wise, and hopefully not our actual near future, like everything culminates in a pretty massive catastrophic war, right? Like something in the next like couple decades where it's resource management, it's all these pieces, and like a sizable chunk of the population, like I'm gonna say 50% or more, are gone. Right. And in a real sense, like after World War II, right, where we saw like a massive resurgence of forests and like a physical change in our environment because of all of the mass death that happened in World War II. Right, we see that sort of happen. Like the world, like it's sort of a hard reset. We almost got a second chance in a really bloody, terrible way. Yeah. Right, like we reset the human imprint on the planet because of that. Right, and that's shortly after where we kind of people came together and went, "We can't let this happen again. This was terrible. Look what we did." But we're still doing those same patterns, right? All we know. When that little nudge from the alien influence comes in, we see this nexus point that you guys just need this piece to progress and not screw yourselves up again. Right.
Or maybe, like maybe the governmental disruption of a great war led to like nuclear power plants being neglected, and say like 3 or 4 of them just go full Chernobyl, and it kind of scares the remaining 50% of the human population that like you're saying, like we kind of finally get the message, but it's like after the war decimates human population, and then we have man-made disasters that we can't deny, and we can't, like, this is our energy mismanagement, and so the remainder are fully committed to like restoring the balance.
So my thing with war is just with our current tech, like if there is a massive all-out large-scale war, like it's gonna be a nuclear war, and it's not like I don't think it's gonna leave enough life.
So here's where I like that. And I've worried about this. One, some level of mad I feel still is present, right? Like in terms of people being like, we've had enough media and enough focus on like, wow, this is really bad. But furthermore than that, what I see in terms of this war happening maybe in the next few decades, right, is we've got to this point of resource management where our power demands are so excessive on the planet that we've actually had to scrap nuclear. Like we're like, look, nuclear weapons don't work. It's obviously we've never had to use them really, apart from a few select terrible moments. We need that for power, right? So maybe we've stripped our nuke weapons. We still have really terrible conventional bombs and biologics, etc.
Yeah.
But like, let's say we've stripped our nuke weapons, so like that isn't like no scorched earth element to that.
Okay.
Right? Like that's been used maybe to kind of correct that piece.
What if instead of like this massive war between multiple countries, what if it's more of like a class war? And like you're talking about like, I mean, it would take like it would take a lot to make something like this ever happen. But what if it's like a rising up of the working class where they all take like in every country their governments kind of get taken over, and it's like, no, you can't let off your nukes because we fucking control the government now, and we basically we eat the rich. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, everybody's like, you fucked our world.
Fully support this, right? Like a war starts outside of that, and then people come up and like, hey, the call comes, hit the button. And they're like, no. Like, yeah. Like, the tech guys in the room are like, no. And, like basically, like, the entire, like, working class just, like, kind of, like, turn on the governments and are like, fuck this, you guys are done. Like, we are done listening to you. And, like, anarchy might break out as a result of this. There might not be law and order for a while. Definitely won't be. But I don't think we need to have a nuclear war happen if we went from it, like, that angle with it. Because, it like... That type of like negative, that type of energy is already culminating. You can already see it happening. Like people are pissed. They're sick of like their voice not being heard. They're sick of like old fucking white men making decisions for them. Like, let's be real, you know? Mm-hmm. Like it's a plausible like direction that our society could go, is just like a complete, and honestly it's one of the only things that could save our climate if you really want to like go there.
Yeah, and I feel like that would lead to the kind of cooperation that you need to actually build a colony ship.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right.
Like
where I'm getting at it.
That's a good point too.
Yeah. I want us to come together with like a solid, like, can we all agree, like, by the time the colony ship happens, there is like world government. We are like
no borders. Yeah.
No borders. Yeah, absolutely agree. Like,
well, I was kind of wondering if the way you wanted to go was that
I'm trying to butt you in.
Thank you.
It's not just the first colony ship. It's the last, and this is it. This is like, you know, the last chance for humanity to, like, it's not. It's more like a relocation than a expansion of the human race.
I wanna hold on to that. I don't want to commit to that hard just yet, but like I like that because there's some thoughts I've had in that realm. So like for now, I want to treat this like the first colony ship, and then maybe see where we go with that. But I do like that idea a lot, for sure.
But not like on the send off. We don't think of ourselves as the last of humanity. Mm-hmm. We're just the next.
Right. It's like, hey, let's do this thing. Yeah. Cool, like that. So what I'm getting from this now is like group government. And sorry, what was it?
It was kind of going off of what Ashleen was saying, because what I was thinking is like, because we're thinking about now, like, how is it gonna like go tits up, and like, you know, and how are we gonna like come together, and like definitely like we rise up or we say like, no, we're not having it anymore, but like on every level, not just like the key turner for the nuke, but like the person who's like, actually, y'all ain't giving me health care for like years now, so I'm just gonna go home and take care of the fam. Like, you got this? Because I don't think you know how to run these consoles. Like, you know? And just like...
Slice your own deli meat.
Right, exactly. You want to know about cheese? Good luck.
Yeah, we realize that the infrastructure has power, right?
Exactly. And that was mostly what I was thinking, is just sort of like, I love the idea of fleshing that out to be more than just like, we're angry, turn the table. I mean, you know, definitely flip the tables.
No,
but,
it's like power in all situations.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
We have the power.
Yeah.
And we realize the power of now we are interconnected via the internet and knowledge, and like, do we need representative democracies anymore when we can all like
Right.
Assuming we have a good infrastructure, educate ourselves, be able to say like, hey, no, my voice literally matters in this, right?
Yeah.
In a global, like we are all, in this virtual reality voting moment where we can have like giant forums and talk when there's less billions of us because many people died.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think honestly, I feel like we're seeing it now because like I know that in some of my like, I don't know, like alternative, like smaller groups and communities, it's like we're talking about interdependence. Like, how do we survive right now? We're talking about being interdependent and like relying on each other while you look up and we have a lot of our higher ups who are doing the opposite, right? And so I love the idea of that coming around and biting them. Like, oh, really? You thought your money would save you? You thought like, your like big house on the hill like would save you? That's cool. We know how to run it. I knew how to blow it up. Yeah. Or whatever.
Do your own laundry.
Yeah.
Like,
No,
can you
I
imagine
like
some
that.
like systematic thing where like everything gets hacked and like all like debt gets erased and like passwords all get unlocked
please.
and like
I love this.
like all like new codes get blocked like all simultaneously. Like, well, I don't know.
I mean,
How
there's
did those zeros in your
I'm
electronic
sorry,
bank
I
account
smashed
work
it, by
out?
the way. I just get
Yeah.
Oh, they're gone.
speculate.
Go for it.
there's been a conversation in a couple different groups that I'm in on Facebook and online in general about how like within this like specific community, like we're passing around the same $50.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, yeah.
oh shit, you here, and then somebody else is like, oh, I need, and we're like here, but it's all within the same like group of
Support.
30 people.
Yeah.
Like,
I would love this, and my goal for this too is to inspire any of you to like, write bullet points or snippets or stories or novels, actually, on
Are you writing
some of
a
these
novel?
like
Right now?
on some of these on some of these like vignettes, right? Like
Yeah.
because for me, like what I like to see is we talked about anarchy, which I love, right? Like there's going to be these moments of small pods and communities and what we need where it starts small, being like, hey, we are self-sufficient, and then you start adding and working with other communities. And when we've torn down those power structures, I mean, this is going to be the most hand-wavy we get in the series, by the way. But when we've torn down those power structures and we see how far it can get, but we still have the infrastructure from a capitalist age where we can communicate and share, and we eventually, it builds surprisingly fast with, I would say, what Remainer and the technology and energy that is left behind at this point, where it becomes this global community, right? But it starts in that small, like, this is my fam, right? This is my chosen group, this is my village, and then like, hey, we have these resources that helps with them, and then we expand until we are
This
at
is our world.
this idealized, sort of transhuman world now that we eventually get to. But I like that as like a base. Very cool. I like that. Thank you.
Yep.
So what I see the major pieces for this is this war, this die-off, this sort of build-up, this alien element that comes in, provides some level of tech or solution to us, which I see is fusion power, because we're not there yet, but we will be in 200 years. Fusion is key, right? Because we could survive on that energy just from the oceans alone for 2 trillion years. It's ridiculous. So
and fusion
and nano. I think they provide nano because then that starts also allowing us to like draw particles out of the atmosphere, right? We're very hand wavy, but like I think those are going to be like their contributions, which allows us to start, analyzing, better computing, better power, cataloging consciousness, right? Being able to figure out these things and kind of go from there.
Yeah, or maybe it posed a challenge to maybe like they didn't give us the understanding of how to do it, but rather devices that did it that we can't stop, and we slowly sort of unwind their
We're unlocking little bits.
Yeah, like we kind of reverse engineer it, even though we can't like stop it and take
Which
it
is why
apart.
we're not fully good at it yet, but we're getting there.
Right, but it's doing the job, and so like it clues us into like, well, it would have to be working like this and this and this and this, and we start to reverse engineer, and then we start to build back up, and in the process, we realize like how we can use it to create the generation ship.
I love this. So much so because you don't know what I have planned, and this is all feeding in delightfully into things that I'm looking forward to. So I want to start this next section. So I feel like we're at a point where I want to be like I'm solid, like with our thought process coming up to like closer to the now, right?
Yeah.
And I'm open again. Like we'll narrow down years, but I have a rough 200-year-ish in the future. Let's say something that's like enough to speculate, far enough out that there is some hand wavy science happening, but still close enough to now that there is this like we did this fall and this rise out of the ashes again. And I love the government philosophy idea. It's making me feel real good. So we can narrow down those details
man.
as we go, right?
Eat the rich.
Yeah.
Be gay, do
They're full of protein.
What does sexuality mean in this case? Right? I'm really intrigued to explore that, right, in a transhuman world. So now this is where like a little role playing is coming in. I want to each of you imagine you are engineers, scientists, city planners, whatever. You are part of a council, advisory board from now this like relatively newly formed world government, right? That has come together, and we are doing this project together, right? We finally come together. We feel like we fixed the direction of the world, and we are doing this project to go like colonize this planet, the first undertaking of its type. Y'all are going to be on the ship, right? You know, this is not your character, right? It's like that's the goal. Right? You're going to be on the ship or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Exactly right. It's just hand wavy. You're this kind of idea. So I want to be at that meeting with you, and I want to think about what do we need in order to get there. So here are some of the guiding questions. I'm gonna give a specific one, but along the lines of like if we're going to this colony ship, right? How big is it going to be? How many people, physical and otherwise, are going to be going on this journey? What resources do we need? What habitat is going to be present on the ship? These kind of ideas. And I don't feel like we need to answer every single one of them, but I want to treat this like hey, let's just game this out and have a conversation. Like if we were planning a trip to another planet, right? So to give you an idea, there is going to be resource limitations for this, right? Still, because even with fusion reactor, you know, the level that our technology has gotten to, huge power requirements, right? And in order to bring the stuff that we need, we're going to probably need a pretty big ship. I'm leaving these questions still vague and open to you. But I'm imagining that we are at least planning on only getting up to maybe 1/10 the speed of light for various reasons, right? In terms of gravitational assists, what it takes to actually change a massive bulk's direction with, you know, various things slowing down, etc., and still getting there in a reasonable amount of time. So we're expecting something along the lines of
that one episode where we're dead in the water.
Right. Well, here's the thing is, so
Or
it's going to be while we're accelerating up to 1/10 the speed of light. There's going to be G associated with that from that acceleration, but we are going to cut and eventually do just rotational gravity. That is kind of the plan. So I'm going to give you like general ideas. I kind of wanted some things I've thought about on it, right?
Oh my god, dark matter is really hard.
I mean, it is, but
It's really hard in a lot of different
And
senses.
you can't see it.
Nope. We're not sure how it reacts with normal matter apart from gravitationally. Anyway, we can talk about that later. So that's kind of the general basics I want to think about, right? In terms of there'll be rotational gravity, etc. Any things you want to talk about? So, for instance, I'll start us off in food, right? So, is there going to be a lot of cryogenic freezing? Is there going to be a lot of people awake, people asleep? One thing that I do want to add is I want there to be a virtual world. There's planned to be a virtual world, so not everybody needs to be awake all the time, right? Maybe we've brought extra people along, too, who are existing in this virtual world, right? And it's going to be not an infinite virtual world, right, because there's also power limitations to it. But that's also where I'm going to be some of the asterisks that we talk about in that list, right? Because I can play with your virtual world. But generally speaking, we want that virtual world to be, like, again, physics similar to ours in the way they've coded it. And I'll say there can't be tweaks to that down the line. So with those as sort of seeds, I want to see, like, what do we do for food? Do we bring food? Do we all exist digitally? Do we want to, these are the things I want to talk about. I'll stop talking and kind of let the playground happen. So who wants to start? If any ideas? Cool.
Okay, I wanted to talk about something that you mentioned that wasn't about the food, but rather about, well, I guess it is about the food because how many people. And, because when I was chatting briefly with everyone about, like, what they wanted to see, and I saw that there was, like, kind of a blend of people who wanted, like, you know, original bodies or like, you know, biological bodies or mechanized stuff or bioengineered stuff and blah 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 blah. I say it's all part of it. Like in a sense that you can create its diversity in function.
Mm-hmm.
Like systems are different, so they would operate as redundancies. Like increases the chances of not everything going wrong. and so maybe there are people who are more culturally comfortable in those roles, like in those realms. And yeah, like some could just be dreaming in plugged in, their cortical stack plugged into an environment, and continue to like kind of have a real time interaction with like people who are awake and walking around on the ship and doing stuff, can access that sensorium and talk to people whose bodies are either disconnected or sleeping. Could be that the people who are awake are like tending to what amounts to like farms. Like there would have to be like I would say algae would be a serious thing on the ship, because it would be like oxygen scrubber.
I mean, if people
or
even need to
CO2
eat.
scrubbers, and I would say 200 years from now, after a cataclysm, we've learned to eat algae and we don't mind it.
Yeah. Well, also what I'm imagining, back to the food level of like 3D printing things, like algae and mushrooms, in terms of like the fungal structure and cell structure, right? But then additionally with nanotech, right, we basically take something that's like, this is a steak, and I'm going to put all of the different pieces I need into it. And it's not even technically from an animal, right? It's just like I am lacing the structure, I am growing the DNA, I'm doing whatever. But yeah, stuff that is basically like that can grow fast and just be a cellular / atomic resource. Be like, cool, this structured all of that hydrogen for me as an energy save.
And the people in the virtual reality would only need to experience food as like a psychological palliative, like they eat because they're awake and they like to do that. Like, but to them it's just as satisfying as the people who are in the meat space actually eating.
I feel like, so depending on how we do it and who's doing what, because I see there being like various, like, I just don't see us really getting away from having people that are in some ways seen as like slightly higher than other people or have more. I mean, I would love to get away from that, but I just still see that
Like a hierarchy?
to a certain extent, yeah. But as far as like talking about the food and people who are plugged in or people who are just stacks, I feel like we're going to need everything. Like, so we're going to need to be able to grow food however we choose to do that. We're going to need to be able to grow meat sacks however we're going to do that. And as far as like dreamers to those who are awake, honestly, like from sort of when I think about it from a psychological standpoint, you're going to have to cycle them through. Like, we can sit around and we can talk about like, oh yeah, we'll give them some nice dreams and we'll like let them eat a steak or whatever. But even if you're not going to sleeve into the body that you like, when we finally land, when we finally get to where we're going, even if you're not going to sleeve in, like you're going to get some fancy body down the road, at some point, I think it needs to be part of like almost a program that dreamers are awoken and into bodies and then have to go do things in the bodies. Yeah. And then come back, like it in a schedule. Yeah. No, I'm saying that, like...
I'm basically saying, like, what I'm planning is that we are going to have a very robust virtual environment for us to play in.
Oh,
and
for sure.
a very robust real environment.
If we're role-playing this meeting, I'm just trying to put out there the psychological aspect
that's
of
exactly what
how we take care of our crew.
Absolutely. Yeah. I imagine like a body library.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
This might not be yours. It might be somebody else's.
And there might be people who don't want to be awake for any of it. And then I think
everybody's got to play their part, man.
Yeah. I agree. Also,
you can't. Yeah.
I also think that, again, from a psychological perspective, there's a part of me that wants to say that anybody who says that becomes a risk, because, like, there's a part of me that wants to say that anything sitting dreaming that long is allowed to almost spoil. It's like
freaking Dark Phoenix.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe they can't. Maybe it's just a simply
that idea, like that. I'm right. Spoil is something like, let's leave it at that for now, and I'll use that as a seed for like what would that look like.
Sure.
I'm going to say that the virtual world is going to be technology's progressed enough that people are aware. For the most part, it's a virtual world, usually. I mean, unless there's something, like, off, right? That happens. But it's, like, it is still relatively seamless and functional as the real world for all intensive purposes, right? You're in the Matrix, is kind of how I'm seeing it. A little less, like, wonky as they do in, like, Altered Carbon or whatnot, in terms of, like, oh, this is fake, right? Like, it is, like, this is almost indistinguishable. Like, almost in that really interesting philosophical, I forget the sort of concept of, if they built a map so perfect, right? And then we just lived in the map.
Oh, the map is the territory.
Yes, thank you. That.
Yeah.
So, yes. I see you've been sitting on something.
Yeah.
I want to hear that.
So, coming off what Evie was saying, because I was trying to decide, like, should we have, like, individual modules that are rotating? But, like, hearing what Evie's saying, like, I'm really liking the idea of one rotational drum that has, like, 6 or 7 villages with, like, maybe 2,000 people awake. But since everybody has mesh or has lace and can see the mesh, dreamers can interact with the people who are awake and, like, taking care of the drum and food production and all of the, like, physical things, but then because of the virtual world, they can also step outside of that.
What I wanted to see is there is a locality to the virtual world, and the ship is a location in the virtual world.
Yeah.
So that you can exist in, like, this other space that is separate from the ship. And when people move into the ship, right, ship sensors, all these different pieces, like, those people can be, like, you know, augmented reality if you're looking at them being like, oh, somebody's there, but can't, right? They're
You can't touch them, but you can still see them.
In the
you
ship
can
space,
talk to
which
them.
you can interact with. Cool.
But yeah, no, exactly. But that also is really going to entail that people rotate through, because people who are physically there are gonna want to see something other than just the inside of the ship. Like, eventually they're gonna want to travel as well.
5 to 10, is that good? I don't feel cool.
But I really like that idea because that connection is also going to be important for both parties, right?
Yeah.
Like, because we don't want
like
any
the
space madness, you know, like no soap eating.
Like you're still, you can,
a little bit.
well, and you can talk to, like, if half of your, like, you have a partner who's sleeping, you can still talk to your partner.
Right.
Even if you're awake or, like, you're sleeping.
You could even
and they're
have
awake.
virtual interactions with your partner.
Absolutely.
You can have cyber sex.
You guys see that farmer just making out with air over there?
Listen, I was thinking about cuddling, but that's fine.
Hey, you do whatever you
You do you. Yeah.
You're literally being big spooned by a backhoe.
That sounds amazing.
Backhoe's a term of endearment.
That's the quote of the night.
You're welcome.
Write it down for me. Nice. No, I like that. So then my question that came up with y'all, and I want to, like, maybe toss to the other side of the table. How do you think people were chosen for this mission? If we're looking at
I had an
2,000
idea
question
for
mark,
this.
Yeah.
order of magnitude 2,000 people, you're thinking?
Yeah, I mean, that's about... For the size of a ship, no, that's actually, like, the sustainable psychological population.
I would think you would
Like,
bring
if-
genetics.
In, like, living in groups of, like, if you have 2,000 people living in groups of no more than, like 400 max, and being able to travel from, like, one space to another within the ship as well.
Okay, different communities, but total 2,000-ish plus minus. That's kind of an order.
Yeah.
Thing. Okay, cool.
Well,
So how do we choose these people?
Well, wait a minute. Though I had a thought about, okay, if we establish that people can only, like, oh no, wait a minute. I just found my own logical fallacy.
At least you found
Okay,
it
never mind.
first.
No, what I was speculating was if we're cycling people in and out to keep them doing things, and, like, maybe people get tired, want to take vacation, whatever. You would end up with a lot of people who's a lot of engineers, basically. I think we'd be kind of engineer heavy because we'd always have to have a certain number of engineers working on the ship. Right.
I'm assuming.
I would assume that things are going wrong all the time.
I mean, it is our first thing out. There's going to be the unexpected. So there's assumptions, but there's also, like, access to different engineering knowledge, right? There's levels of people like being able to download things to a certain extent too.
I was going to say, I feel
Are you
like when
saying
you're
that the
sleeping,
people-
you could also pick up new skills.
So are we more talking about like a lot of very versatile people, like people who can do
That
a lot of different
seems like a good
Survivors.
idea.
You're gonna have to be.
and are comfortable with that too.
Yeah.
So,
Especially with
Redundancy,
and that would,
as you were
'cause that-
mentioning.
exactly. So that would be part of the selection process.
Like, everybody's gonna
I'm
have
back
to
down,
do
I'm back down to
everything.
2,000. So
Yeah.
2 to 3 PhDs. Next.
I think it should be something like the direction we took our society, right? I think it should be something somewhat equitable. Not necessarily. I don't think it should be like something that could come across as like elitist, like based off of like brain, like genetics or anything like that. I don't think it like.
Also,
I
what if
feel
genetics
like
matter?
the direction we went with our society, it should be more something like people can audition or like petition for like this is why I should be on this ship, and then there's like some kind of selection process or some kind of like way to like filter that down to like who they end up deciding like I don't know, but that kind
Social
of
media advance.
that kind of depends on what we do with our world government too.
Yeah.
Like how is because the government would be the one making this decision theoretically.
I mean, like
Whatever semblance of like order we have.
Cool.
would
Our
be
ship
making
is
this,
just a
right?
rogue group of people who are
Yeah.
like, fuck
like-
your world government, we're leaving.
No, okay, so it's like a
Somebody's on
dumb.
Reddit.
Everybody's
Yeah.
like, whoever
Looking
gets on
for
the ship
a
first
drive.
gets to go. That's
Right.
like,
yeah, that,
Well, I was already thinking that, like,
giant hide and seek
you
game.
would have
Like the
potentially
theory.
stowaways, but you might choose to keep the stowaways because that's some ingenuity that you might want to
well,
Yeah.
put
the
back
stowaways
in.
because they'll eat the cockroaches.
I mean,
If we're not
also
already
gonna be
eating the cockroaches,
Totally
then-
gonna be eating the cockroaches.
yeah.
No comments, no answer.
I had another food point.
Good.
Okay? So in the spirit of transhumanism, bodies are matter.
Yes, we.
They really
Yeah.
have little meaning outside
We recycle
of that.
Yeah.
Once we're no longer using the body, it's just matter. We are so going to be cannibalistic, like not necessarily like killing and eating each other, but
Mhm.
Meat's
like
meat, yo.
meat's meat. We're going to be like you recycling
So
I was
like human matter, and it won't necessarily be a thing.
I was thinking not cannibalism, but definitely
Yeah.
like recycling into the system.
Yeah, we
like,
drink our pee, we eat our bodies.
yeah, but also
Not
like
in that order,
at this
but-
point we're
And we can like kind of almost transmute the matter. Is what you're like
Yeah,
put the
I-
matter
no.
back in, and then it,
So yeah, we're using mushrooms to decompose bodies that are used up. Like those
Right.
are then growing our
slash
crops.
nanotech to tear things
All,
literally
Yeah.
apart.
all
and
my
use the
point
pieces.
is that we won't necessarily be like squicked out about the cannibalism.
No.
That it wouldn't be it wouldn't even be
'Cause it's not-
considered cannibalism.
Yeah.
Right.
We know that we're breaking it down to its component parts. Like you were not eating a person.
Right.
You're eating this. You're eating these molecules that fuel yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So with that note, I want to take a quick break, but I want to continue like everybody thinking about, just for some fun like flavor level, what kind of qualities beyond just versatile we're looking for, like how people were chosen. I would like to actually think about that because that could be kind of interesting for your own character backgrounds, right? Like how people were chosen for this mission / chose themselves,
So I
like
like the
what we
petition idea.
prioritize. I like that petition idea, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I want to spend this break
Like,
thinking
sell
about that a
yourself,
little bit.
you know?
Right.
We're going to take a 5 to 10 minute break.
Yeah. Also, Epi has a question.
So-
It says Eclipse Phase system uplifts AGIs as part of the world society. So they're sort of curious as to like how you're going to fit that in, if at all.
Yeah.
We'll get into that.
So we're going to get into that. The tagline right
I'm
now
very
before
into that.
before we go to break is in the same way that things have not progressed yet. I think that this is still the first generation of people that has this level of potentially reaching immortality, right? And it's still new. There's still an attachment to your former meat suit, right? Some people are way more adapted to it than others. Generally, people have not really embraced jumping into a werewolf body yet or anything along those lines. Not to say that we can't head that direction, but it's like people haven't thought about, like, we're still at that early culture tech of like spreading out into it, right? And so I'm going to say like no augmented or uplifted animal concepts yet, right off the bat. Like I'm willing to play with, and if you give me cool ideas, I'm down. But down the line, yes,
can't
as
be
things
like
progress.
outliers in that though, because I feel like there's already people who would
Let's
do
talk-
that now.
Yeah.
You know
In
what
which
I
case,
mean?
let's
Like,
talk about it, and I'm down
yeah.
for that concept. I'm just saying it's not just like a cat. Like there's a contingent of all uplifted like squid or anything yet, right?
Right, but I
And then
do-
there's AI. We will talk about. There's certainly AIs around, whether they are like fully sentient. Maybe there's less of those things being like fully like. I'd say they're around, but it's rare. right? But we've certainly dabbled in AI tech.
And it might be like just that in this case we've got a lot of AIs. Some of them may be starting to become sentient.
Right, yeah. So we will think about all of that, and thank you for the excellent questions. We will think about all of this and be back in 10 minutes. It's